Testing the microphone. I think the microphone is working. Okay, I don't need screams like that, please. That's not the goal.
The Called by Joshua Webster. Chapter 1. The shooter took a deep breath and focused on his target. There was a young emergency response personnel hostage in the way, but experience told him to wait for his moment. The hostage was calm and cut up. As a sniper, the shooter had seen worse. The target was dressed in what looked like a well-used military jacket. He looked solemn and indifferent to the situation. "How did you get into this?" the shooter said with disappointment. As the target turned to face the officers on the ground, he pulled his hostage close with a blade to his throat. The road seemed to engulf the two. Seeing the hostage struggled, the shooter sighed and pulled the trigger. "Sorry to kill you again." Maroney awoke with a jump to gunfire blaring in the next room. He rolled over, unlocked the gun safe under his nightstand and froze. There was an explosive sound on the TV with muffled dialogue. With a sigh and eye roll, he moved out of bed. The volume quickly dropped from the living room. As he walked around the corner, he saw just what he expected. The volume quickly dropped from the living room. As he walked around the corner, he saw just what he expected. Luke looked like a 15-year-old kid, only with a beard. He was sitting cross-legged in front of the couch watching some Netflix cartoon and eating some cereal with marshmallows. "Good morning," Luke said with his mouth full, his head tilted back as he tried not to choke on the monster-sized mouthful of dry cereal. "You're out of Lucky Charms." "I didn't buy any Lucky Charms," Maroney said, half yawning and rubbing his face, testing if he should shave his own week-old beard. "That's what I said," Luke said with a new serving spoon worth of cereal in his mouth. Maroney sighed. "Other than polishing off my food, what are you doing here?" Luke held up one finger as he finished drinking the milk from his bowl. "First of all, I said this wasn't your cereal. Second, Can't I just say hi to my older brother? Third, you are out of milk. Luke answered with a spark of snarky sarcasm. When you are willing to tell me why you are here, I'll listen. Moroni started as he walked into the bathroom. Moroni shaved, brushed his teeth, and applied deodorant, always listening to what Luke was doing, but the cartoon had ended and now there was silence. After cleaning up, Moroni went back the way he came, heading to his room. He didn't look at his brother, but Moroni walked slower, hoping he would hear Luke give an idea of what he wanted. I need a place to stay. The answer came as Moroni touched his doorknob. Did you get a job? Moroni asked without hiding his annoyance. Yes. Let me rephrase that. Moroni said, still looking at his closed bedroom door. Is this a temporary job or a career? I'm the newest EMT in town. That doesn't completely answer the question. Moroni mumbled. His face dropped as he breathed out slowly. Do they count your pre-med to get hired? Moroni probed. That, and my natural talent. Luke said. How long will this last? Moroni asked, not wanting to wait for an answer. Moroni twisted the knob to his door but didn't open it. I don't know. I don't plan to quit. Why don't you stay with Mom and Dad? Moroni asked, hoping for a way out. Luke laughed, because it's in town, and I can cut 20 minutes off my commute if I live here, at least so Mom says. Moroni let out another audible sigh. He was silently debating whether to continue getting dressed or talk to his little brother. All he let escape was, "You never plan to quit." Give me a minute. I need composure. Luke shrugged, moved to the couch, and said, You could just say no. Moroni sat on his bed, still in his robe. He debated with himself. He laid back and reached across the full-size bed set for one. On the far nightstand he pulled out a small, black book. He thumbed through the handwritten pages and silently read an entry.
10 minuutteis upp. Luke kallet. Ketreset antalktome.
Then wait, Moroni called as he threw the book back on the stand. He grabbed his shirt from a drawer and struggled to put it over his head. He finished putting the shirt and pants on and walked out. That is...
If anyone knows how to fix Microsoft Word, I do not know why that one line, a Spanish accent, trying to pronounce it. Never figured that one out. But I delete it and edit it and it always shows up.
It's really different. Moroni finally answered. It feels right. Luke agreed. Do you think you can keep it? Moroni questioned as he sat down. I think so, Luke unsurely replied. I think it is something I was made to do. At least you'll be using your degree for something. Moroni determined. What brought you to the decision to do that? Luke was silent for a few seconds. I found something out about myself, and I want to use that to help the world. So, you are following me and joining the army? Moroni joked, still not sure how to answer the question of Luke's living arrangements. Never and never. Luke answered quickly. I just think I just need a temporary place to stay while I get my first month's rent. Dad suggested talking to you. I see. Moroni said with an air of realization. I am okay with you staying for a month or two, but then you better have a home away from my home. Even if it is back with Mom and Dad. I am sorry. I get it, Luke cut in, and thank you. Chapter 2. A man walked through a crowded parking garage. He wore an old camo jacket and work boots. His jeans were faded from years of washing and wear. His skin dark and tight with his Polynesian heritage and sun from years of military drills. In his hand, he carried a rock the size of his fist. It was a dark gray except for a few rust-colored spots staining the surface. A group of men, women, and children, all with various bags, crossed his path to the automatic doors on the west side of the garage. He sidestepped and bowed with a forced smile to let them rush towards the doors marked Terminal 2. With the cross traffic out of sight, he walked, undeterred, towards a man wearing a fob and turban. The man in a turban was facing away, focused on his phone. He didn't notice anything or anyone. His pale skin and sandy blonde hair looked out of place with his attire. He leaned against his old car and swiped on his phone as if waiting for someone to show up. "Hello, dirtbag," the military man said through his teeth. The man in the turban turned in surprise. He focused on a fist-tainted gray to rust red. The turban fell in a knot and the phone shattered on the smooth parking lot cement. "You give good people a bad name when you dress like that," the attacker said to the unconscious man. He shook his hand and the glove turned to dust. The attacker opened the driver door, pulled a tab, and released the trunk. With little effort he filled it with the unconscious man. "Welcome back," a familiar voice said as the lonely woman walked into the dim church from a bright summer day. As her eyes adjusted to the foyer's low light, the woman looked at the various conversations and groups that were paying no attention to her. "Welcome back, Molly. It is nice to see you again," the young bishop said from his position at the entrance to the chapel. Molly noticed others looking her way. She waved at them and was greeted with smiles. Most were genuine, but Molly instinctively knew which ones were not. As Molly walked by the disingenuous smiles, they gave way to cold stares. "Sorry for being so loud," the bishop honestly apologized in a whisper. "Sarah will be pleased to see you." "Thank you," Molly sighed. Molly avoided eye contact as she entered the chapel. She kept her focus on the carpet. While organ music was playing, it couldn't hide the whispers. "Honey, look who's back," a man said from the back row. Molly focused her eyes on the carpet. "Who?" "Oh, hi, Sister Smith." Molly kept her thoughts to herself as she sat down. She didn't wave or pay attention to the woman attempting to get her attention. The pew was familiar and comforting. It was not at the front and not at the back. The pew in front of her had a chip out of the wood that had been filled with green and red crayon to the point it was permanent. The minutes passed and the chapel filled in. As sacrament meeting started, she sang an opening hymn. "Hi Aunt Molly," a 9-year-old girl said over the music, bringing a smile to Molly's face. Bishop Bouquet's family came into the chapel as the first verse closed. The 4 kids started sitting around Molly as Sarah Bouquet sat at the end and waved at her husband who was on the stage. Sister Bouquet then turned and acknowledged the group of kids who had adopted Molly as their own. Molly looked through her scriptures as the announcements were made, and the hymn started for the sacrament. It was partially an attempt to focus her mind, but it was also to show an example to the children who were more interested in their coloring pages and phones. The Bouquet's youngest son waited till the sacrament was passed, then climbed over his sister to reach Molly to show her some new toys. Molly set down her scriptures since she wasn't reading anything specific and entertained the child. The boy showed the toy like a sales pitch, boasting about all that he could imagine it doing. Molly never got a good look at it as the boy wouldn't keep it still long enough for Molly's eyes to focus on it. The boy was happy to have Molly's attention, so Molly let him fly the thing in the air and landed on the pew while Molly nodded. The game ended abruptly when the little boy dropped the toy off the back of the pew where it fell in the row behind them. The child stood on the bench and leaned over to retrieve his amazing toy. Molly grabbed the boy with both arms as the boy attempted to dive. A tap came on her left shoulder, leaving her in an uncomfortable position. The bouquet's oldest daughter grabbed her brother's other leg and they worked to pull the 2-year-old upright. "I think he wants this." A male voice came from behind her. Molly pulled the boy back, took the toy, and mouthed to the stranger, "Thanks." As the kid went back to his mother, Molly turned in her seat. "Who was that?" she asked the bouquet's oldest daughter, who was attempting to give her brother freeze-dried yogurt. The little girl looked at the bearded, tall skinny guy, who waved back at her. There was a second guy there without a beard, but the girl shrugged to Molly. As the sacrament meeting went on, Molly attempted to turn around. There were 2 men behind her, but she didn't recognize them. She was determined to thank them herself. The prayer ended, and Molly acted. She turned around and saw the 2 men grabbing their mess on their pew. The 2-year-old upright. "Hi, I'm Molly." She blurted a little too loud. "Hi," the shorter, heavier one answered, "I am Moroni, and this is Luke." Moroni paused and squinted at Molly. Molly squinted back. He looked familiar. The man with a beard waved but never made eye contact. He watched down the row. "So, not your kid?" "No," Molly said, watching Moroni roll his eyes. "I don't have kids. Those are the bishop's kids," Moroni explained to a distracted Luke. Luke looked down the row as it cleared. "They like you," Luke said as he finished picking up his program that he had apparently shredded. Without looking back, he shuffled out the far side of the chapel. She turned to Moroni. He looked familiar, but she couldn't figure where. "So, are you new to the ward?" Neither was sure who said it first. They shared an awkward laugh and Moroni motioned for Molly to go first. "I have lived here for most of my life, but just moving back." She froze. Moroni could see she didn't want to say more. "I am new. I moved in about 6 months ago and Luke just moved in 3 months ago." "Are you brothers?" Molly asked, supposing that she knew the answer already. "Yeah," Moroni answered with a sigh. Things got quiet. The rest of the chapel had cleared out a few minutes ago. And now Sunday school had started. "We better get going," Molly decided to break the silence. They headed for the exit without a word and parted ways in the foyer. Molly entered the Relief Society room and sat in the front. "Did you see who was here today?" A lady in the back of the room whispered. Molly stared forward with terror. A second voice joined in. "Yes, I was worried that she had gone crazy after he left. I wanted to stay at the church." Molly mumbled to herself, "Please let me go somewhere else." Molly slumped on her chair. Sister Bouquet sat next to her and put a hand on Molly's shoulder. "Don't let them get to you," Sister Bouquet said, "they just need to get over themselves." Molly nodded in agreement. "I still don't need to hear them. I wish I could just go somewhere else." The classroom door slowly closed itself with a scrape against the carpet and Molly felt her exit getting more awkward. It stuck with a millimeter gap, wedged on the carpet. Apparently, he left because she was a fire hazard. The woman poorly whispered. "Welcome to class." The teacher started over the rumble of conversations. "Before I start, are there any announcements?" The room went quiet long enough for an older man to announce a cleaning assignment. Molly leaned forward and away from Bouquet. As she rose to leave, the door opened in front of her. Moroni waved at everyone as he sheepishly entered the room. "Apparently everyone is in here today," Moroni announced to the class. Molly stood up and offered her chair. "Don't leave on my account," Moroni said with a smile. Molly strained a smile back. "I'm not." With a turn she left. She didn't get far enough down the hall before she heard the woman in the classroom. When were the fire alarms tested last? Molly walked twice as fast until she was back in the foyer. Chapter 3. Moroni sat in the classroom. The teacher began to drone with periodic turns to the chalkboard. He felt uneasy. The side conversations were quiet. He looked around and saw a woman holding a baby. The baby dropped their pacifier with joy. Mom reached over and picked it up and handed it back. Moroni counted down. 3, 2, 1. The kid tossed it again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his little black book. He sighed as he read, "Some sort of emergency with a rusty car." "Where's the party?" Luke asked as Molly paced around the foyer. Luke sat alone on a couch. The rest of the halls were silent and empty. "Somewhere else," Molly said with a sigh, pushing out her frustration. Luke nodded and looked at his phone. She turned and stared at Luke for too long as she took a deep breath. Luke didn't acknowledge her. So, she crossed the room, sat on the other empty couch, and became aware of the noise of her own exhaling. She made a strategic glance at the only other person in the foyer. Luke made eye contact to Molly's embarrassment. "Feel better?" Luke asked. Molly felt herself blush. "Not really," she said as she stood up and walked out the glass double doors. No one was around, but she still said aloud, "I left my scriptures in the room." "You know what? Oh well." She looked around for someone to talk to. The neighborhood was empty. She stared at her car sitting on the road. "I can at least get something to do from the car." Molly forced her foot forward and then the other until she took a couple steps. She counted 12 steps and stopped counting as she heard a car rumbling down the road. The car was obviously speeding as it passed by. Molly watched as she walked towards her own car. The speeder hit the brakes and went and flipped a U-turn towards the church. It swerved directly into the parking, smashing into the back of Molly's car and the side of the truck next to it. With the sound of metal, glass and plastic breaking, Molly was in shock. The truck was shifted side to side with the next minivan. She threw her keys at the attacking car. A dark-skinned man with a military jacket rolled out of the driver's door and stumbled to the back seat. "What the friggin' crap are you doing?" Molly yelled with the small bit of restraint she had. The man ignored her as he ripped out the back seat of his own car and threw it into the street. "Is everything all right out here?" Luke shouted as he ran out of the front door to the church. Molly pointed to the car wreck. "No!" She shouted and gestured at the scene and damage. "What the heck is he doing?" Molly started marching towards the man but stopped as Luke grabbed her shoulder. "Go get Moroni from Sunday school," Luke firmly said to her. "He is a cop." He stepped forward and shouted in a pleasant tone, "Sir, is there some way I can help you?" Molly ran back to the building but froze before opening the door. Luke held his hands up while he walked up to the man. The man didn't look up from his task. "Sir," Luke called out as he slowly reached into his pocket to get his phone. "Do you need any help?" The man slapped something in the back seat of the car and stood upright. Molly and Luke saw the man's face had grown black and gray except for a fragmented yellow vein of paint. Molly turned to the door and ran inside. Luke squinted at the man's dead-toned face. "Is that asphalt?" Molly forgot about the second set of doors until she ran face first into it. She ignored the sting as she sprinted from Sister Bouquet. Molly ignored it as she looked down the row to where Moroni was staring at her. She pointed at him and beckoned him to follow. The class went on as Moroni pocketed his book and pulled out his phone. What's the matter? Moroni asked. Molly panted, there was a car wreck outside. Some rust bucket ran into my car. All right, I will call it in, Moroni said as he unlocked his phone. Anyone injured? Your brother, Molly said, he is talking to the born or made driver. Say no more, Moroni said as his phone rang. Yes, he said to the other side of the call. Car wreck. It was reported. Yeah, an unoccupied parked car. He walked to the glass doors and looked at the damage. Moroni went dead in the face. Make that report include multiple vehicles, include my truck. Molly looked around Moroni to see an update. Luke was nowhere around. The damaged vehicles were where Molly had left them. The man with the asphalt was leaning over his car but not moving anymore. Where did your brother go? Molly asked. Moroni grunted on the call. Get here now, a born or maid involved. He hung up and opened the doors. Get out here. Luke was heard. Molly and Moroni could see the cars but not Luke. Where did the guy go? Molly asked as she got in front of Moroni. Dude, get out here, Luke yelled. Moroni rushed around the crash. Luke was crouched under a human form as he attempted to hold back the golem of asphalt. He has gas cans and propane back here, Luke said as he spit gravel out of his mouth that had fallen on him. He has exposed the battery, but I can't get through to him. Moroni looked in the asphalt golem's hand. There was a metal bar merged in its grip. Moroni smelled the gas and fumes seeping into the air. The golem moved slowly forward. Sand and dirt poured from the golem's joints and reformed, so a weak point was undistinguishable. Moroni grabbed the golem from behind and attempted to pull it off balance with momentary effect. As he shifted the form, it sank into the road further until it was rooted to the ground. The golem's legs were buried to his ankles. Moroni grabbed the golem's arm and pulled it back without success. I feel like I am trying to bend cement, Moroni growled. Moroni wasn't helping Luke in his failed attempt to move the man's arms, but they continued to push. Moroni kicked the golem's knees without luck. Luke groaned with a new attempt. Luke, Moroni shouted. Luke looked at his brother who had stepped back. Luke loosened his grip and witnessed the lack of movement from the golem. Sir, come out of there and talk to us, Moroni commanded. No one has been hurt and no one has to either. Luke stood between the golem and the car. He can hear you, Luke said as he stared at the faceless figure. Keep talking. Molly moved to watch as Luke sat back on the floor of the car and waved at the figure.
Alright, I'll admit, I actually zoned out there for a moment. Is there anything I missed? What did I miss? Huh. I don't like this spot right here. Not sure exactly how. Any suggestions? I have the problem also that I don't know describe this guy covered in asphalt. But I don't know what other words to use. I guess I can take suggestions on that too. If you got this far, thanks for